Welcome to Crusader Media as we take a short look at the history of Veterans Day. On the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month, in the year 1918, the cessation of hostilities ended in the First World War, stopping death and destruction at an unprecedented level never seen before. Chemical weapons, tanks, and machine guns ended lives quickly and en masse. The war to end all wars was over. Europe mourned as many of its best sons were lost. The horrors of the 30 Years' War and the resultant Peace of Westphalia proved to be a distant memory. Europe had not learned, and war entered a new, bloodier age. For America, over 50,000 military lives have been lost in the approximately 6 months of fighting in the European theater. Unfortunately for Europe, these 50,000 American lives, which were 50,000 too many, did not even equal the sum of the total European lives lost in single battles of World War I. So while Veterans Day is a day to celebrate all veterans, we have to make sure that we do not forget its roots. Veterans Day is very important to me. I'm a veteran of both the Marine Corps and the Army. I served on 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan. My father is a veteran of the Navy who served in Vietnam. My grandfather is a veteran of World War II who served in the Army. My great-grandfather is a veteran of World War I who served in the Army. And we can trace our direct male line to almost every single war, sans the Persian Gulf War, in American military history. We have ancestors who fought in the American War of Independence and the Scottish War of Independence. So military history, military service is very important to my family. However, we need to remember why we celebrate Veterans Day. We need to remember that while we do celebrate it for all wars and a veteran's been fought, it was initially Armistice Day, a day to honor those American men and the European heroes who arrived in a hellish landscape full of new weapons and horrors, and fought with courage and vigor. On the American side, from devil dogs being born at Belleau Woods, and the Army punishing Germany at the Second Battle of the Marne and Meuse-Argonne, we need to ensure that there is no war where American lives were lost that becomes a forgotten war or simply an historical footnote. We also need to look at the trajectory of war. I have served. My family has a great service in military history, as I'm sure many of my listeners do as well. We love military history. However, this doesn't mean that we need to love war necessarily, encourage war necessarily, unless it is needed. But we also need to look at how war has so rapidly changed. Wars are not simply masses of men charging with sword and shield, shooting muskets, but now we have incredibly dangerous munitions. We have nuclear weapons, we have drones, we have technology on levels that our founding fathers could have never envisioned. World War I, which to the men who fought, it was a hellscape. It was a war that could never have been envisioned. So this is 1918, and we need to think how much further war has progressed in the next 107 years now that we are in 2025. So we need to honor our veterans. We also need to remember just how devastating war is and why it is honorable to celebrate the men and women that bravely stand up and fight when these horrors are so ever present. Another thing we need to remember as well is that while World War I was thought to be the war to end all wars. All it was simply an interlude until World War II. There are some historians that actually count World War I and World War II as a single great world war. They just see it as simply a 20-year ceasefire until from the armistice on November 11th, 1918 until 1939, which of course there were military actions and annexations that happened between that time period as well. So we can't look at war in a sense with arrogance that what is happening is going to end all wars. The world looked at the horrors of World War I and believed that it was so shocking, it was so big, that it had expanded so viciously that war was now over. And unfortunately, the bloodiness and devastation in mass only increased exponentially for World War II. So we need to have caution when we look at wars, or even now, where I hear many people say that war is a distant memory, that we have evolved too much to ever fight. And now we have a Russian-Ukrainian war, we have constant war in the Middle East, we still have genocides occurring all throughout the world. So let's remember that war is not something that has gone extinct. It is something that we need to study, we need to learn, we need to know what it means. We know the basic tenets and principles of war and whatnot. When we hear politicians speak about war and armed hostilities, interventions, we also simultaneously celebrate and honor those who have come before us. So happy Veterans Day. Honor a veteran today. You know, if you have served, thank you for your service. Thank you for your selfless sacrifice. And thank you for listening to this channel.